What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training. And today we're going to be breaking down how wide receivers can run routes off of steps, not yardage. So we're going to be talking about every single route on the route tree, how many steps are required for that specific route, and then also how you guys can use moves like a rocker step, snapping down, a trigger step, a square cut, whatever it might be, while still thinking about steps when running routes. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it teaches you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you're a wide receiver and you want to know the exact exercises you should be doing in the gym and on the field to improve your skills, check out that very first link in the description below for our ultimate 8-week wide receiver workout plan. It is a 2-month-long daily schedule with daily drills and gym exercises, all broken down with sets, reps, and an example of each one. So if you guys want some more information on that, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you on that. Let's get started with this video. So now, this first route is going to be from Odell, and this is going to be a 15-yard out route. So that's the full route. But we're going to talk about all the routes that you want to run off of the inside foot, and then we're going to talk about all the routes that you can run off of the outside foot. So I'm going to play this full speed. So you guys, this break, when it's a 15-yard out, you would want to break like maybe 12 to 15, I should say, 12 to 15. You would be breaking off of your fourth inside step. So the ball is to the right, so your inside foot would be the right foot. So that would be his fourth inside step. So let's play this thing full speed. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And you see how when he breaks this thing off, he breaks it at 12, and he is kind of like rounding up to 15, 16-ish. That is 15. Now, why is it important to go off of steps with routes? I think when you're a younger wide receiver, maybe you're playing youth ball, high school ball. A lot of times coaches don't necessarily teach running routes off of steps. But when you get to that next level, when you get to that college level, everything is so timing based. It's like everything is just the quarterbacks, especially on like an out route, especially on like a bang 8 post, and we'll get to that in a second. Everything's so timing based. That QB is not going to be waiting. He is going to throw that thing before you break, before you put the foot in the ground, and we need to be breaking off the correct step and at the correct depth he expects me to break off of. So if I don't do that, that can script the timing with my QB. He could be late on the throw. He could throw it too early, put it in the grass, whatever it might be. But we have to make sure that we are consistent with the timing based on the steps of my route. So a pretty good gauge to go off of steps is like that. Like a certain step will take you to a certain yardage. So there are a couple routes you could run at 5 yards. You got like a 5-yard out and maybe like a 5-yard hitch, like a 6-back to 5-yard hitch. And usually both of those routes, the 5-yard out and the hitch, will be off of your second inside step. So let's look at these, count these steps here from Odell. So he's lined up, his front foot is up, or his right foot is up. Now that's his first step total. That's his first inside. Now look where his second inside will take him. Second inside step will take him to about 5 yards. Now on the shorter routes, like the 5-yard hitches, like the 5-yard outs, the slants, some people like to count all of their steps. Instead of counting their second inside, they'll count, okay, I'm going to break this off of my fourth step, not my second inside step. Now, that's not necessarily wrong. I just feel like it might be a little bit easier to count to 2 rather than to count to 4. So if you're running a route, you don't want to be running and going 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to be going 1, 2, and it helps you run a little bit harder while counting steps. Now, counting steps is something that a lot of people don't teach because they think that it's not something you could replicate in a game. In a game, you're not counting steps. I'm going to tell you that right now. Odell in this situation does not have that step count in his head. He's not going first inside, second inside. He's got a lot of things to worry about. He's worried about the ball. He's worried about the coverage. He's worried about the game itself. This is something that you have to rep constantly over and over and over again. So when you're in a game, you could play with your eyes up. You could play fast. You're not slowing yourself down to think about it. Okay, so now, next route I want to talk about here is maybe like a 10-yard out. So what step do you think that would be off of? And that would be like your third inside. So a lot of people like to run that like 8 up to 10-yard speed out where they break at 8 and they'll like round up to 10. That QB's getting that ball out right on time. So that would be a route you break on your third inside step. So Odell would come off of here, like let's count his steps from the very top. So if it was third inside, that's 1, that's 2, that's 3 right there. And where's he at? About 8 yards. That would be a much more harder cut, and that would take you up to 10, and you'd be able to get out of this route. So second inside step will take you to about 5 yards. Third inside step will take you to about 8. And then your fourth inside step will take you to about 12 to 15. Now, let's talk about this. If you're a wide receiver and you're running that 15-yard out, 12 to 15-yard out, again, fourth inside. Now, maybe if you're running a route like a comeback, 15 back to 12, what do you think that would be? That might be your fifth inside step. If you're running a comeback 12 back to 10, that would be your fourth inside step. So you have to get kind of comfortable with the depth and with that stride. Now, some people will say, okay, well, what if it's press man or what if it's man coverage? Do I still want to count my steps? No. That is why you have to be able to know routes based off of the yardage and based off of the steps. So like, let's say, for example, you're in practice and you're training and like you're working a press release. If you're running a route off of it, maybe it's okay to run it off of steps, like if you don't have yard markers out there, maybe you're at a park, whatever it is. But when it's press, it's more so about getting to a landmark. So like, let's say Odell was running this like 12 to 15 yard out route. Instead of it being zone where the DB's off, he had a press look. He would have to give him something off the line, then be able to burst up into the route. Now, because he's trained so often on breaking off of a specific step, because he's trained so often on, running in full stride into the break, it's going to be a little bit more natural to cut on a dime at the break point. But you're more so getting to a landmark, which is the yardage when it is press coverage, because you can't worry about steps. Like, what if a DB gets hands on you and you get jammed and your steps get tripped up and, oh, crap, I'm at my third inside and you're 5 yards short from where you need to be. That's why against press, you wouldn't want to do that. It's more so about getting to a landmark, not running off the specific step or stride. So again, to recap, second inside will take you to about 5 yards. Third inside will take you about 8 to 10, fourth inside, 12 to 15, and then fifth inside, like 15 to 16 yards. And that's usually what you would use on a comeback where it's like 15 back to 12. Okay, so let's play this thing full speed, and then we'll get into any kind of outside foot breaking routes. Let's play this again. This is off of his fourth inside, fellas. It's important to know the stride it's important to know the step because it keeps timing with the QB, and it allows you to avoid those choppy steps where you're preparing for a break point, which will help the DB slow down. We only want to use this, fellas, against off man and zone. Never want to use it when it's press coverage. Okay, so now this is an inside foot breaking route. This is the same 15-yard out route that the Rams like to run. I just wanted to show this because Cooper Kupp uses a rocker step, and I just want to talk to you about how you can use a rocker step that ties into the move, like ties into the specific step that you will break off of. So let's play this full speed. So he's coming up to this break point, and he ends up breaking off of that fourth inside step that we talk about, but he uses a rocker step. So he's coming off here. Left foot is up, so it'd be his fourth left foot. That's one right there. Now that's his second inside here, third inside, and then that is the rocker step, first step of the rocker, and that's his fourth inside. So if you have to run a 12 to 15 yard out route, and that's off your fourth inside step, what foot do you think you would start the cut with if you had to use a rocker step? You would start with your fourth outside step, because a rocker step is when you do a 1-2 at the break, not just a single cut. So that 1-2, you have to start a step earlier than you just breaking off of 1 foot. So that's pretty much all you would do. That's as simple as it goes. You would count your fourth outside step. So you see how he goes here, 1, then that's his second outside, that's his third outside, that's his fourth outside. And that's the hard step. He's trying to sell this cut. He's throwing back to the inside, almost like he's running a post route off of his fourth outside, which is what we will get to next. So let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by Cooper Kupp breaking off of that fourth inside, but using that rocker step a step early to sell like he's breaking back in. Okay, so now, I know that's a lot of information about inside steps, but let's talk about outside steps, right? I think outside steps are sometimes a little bit easier, maybe because there's not as many routes that you go off the outside step, but it's kind of the same thing, I would say, in terms of like depth, but we'll talk about it. So this is going to be a post route, and again, off man coverage, not press man, because we're not worried about that in press man. Press man, it's about getting to a landmark, fellas. That's why we have to be able to know how to do both. I got to be able to run routes based off of yardage and based off of steps. So this is going to be his fourth outside step. I'll play it full speed. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. Right on the fourth, he is able to break this thing right off. And it takes you to about the same depth, I would say. So your fourth, let's start with the very first route, like a slant, a 3-step slant. So this would usually be your second outside. On a slant, 3 steps is not that many to count to. I think it's fine if you do the full thing. But let's count his steps. Second outside, 1, 2. That will take you to about 3 to 5 yards. And that's where you would break off the slant. Now, some people also will run something called a bang 8 post off the third outside step. So that would take you at about 8 to 10, I would say. So third outside step, you'd come off here. That's 1. That's 2, then bam, right at that third step right there, it would be a hard cut at about 7 to 8 yards up to 10. So again, this is why also, fellas, when you break off of any route that is outside foot, so you got a post, you got a dig, you got a slant, you cannot have any false steps off the line because your first outside step will be very short. So let's rewind this to the very top. Imagine if this wide receiver with this front foot, he kind of does take a false step here, but it's not a big one. But a lot of guys will have this front foot end up almost like a yard back off that line. And then guess what your first step does? Your first step is shorter than where it needs to be. Your first step is like at the line of scrimmage rather than a couple yards past it. And guess what? The depth of the play is screwed up. That's why false steps need to be eliminated at all costs off the line against zone or off man coverage. Okay, so focus on, fellas. Whenever we're going outside foot, we have to make sure that it is full stride. So again, 3-step slant, you'd want to go second outside. About 7 to 8 yards, like on a dig, 7 to 8 yards on a post, you'd want to go third outside. And then now at about 10 to 12, I'd say, we'd go fourth outside. So that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, bam, that's 4 right there. Right at about 10. So he's breaking this thing off the fourth outside right at about 10, almost like he's rounding up to 12. He ends up drifting all the way up to 15. I personally don't like that route in terms of his sharpness of the cut, but that's what we need to understand, fellas. Second outside is about 3 to 5 yards. Then you got third outside, which is about like 7 to 8. Then you have fourth outside, 10 to 12. And then fifth outside would be like 12 to 15. So fellas, if you guys have routes solely based on yardage in your playbook, I would try to use this to go off of. I would try to use, okay, this inside step would be this. This outside step would be this step. Because trust me, fellas, when it's zone or when it's off man that I know a lot of you guys see at the younger level, like high school or youth ball, you have to be smooth, you have to self-fade, and you have to maintain a good stride into all your routes. Running routes off of steps is a great way to do that when you get the hang of it. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Again, not a bad job here keeping stride. I don't like the drift necessarily off the break, but fellas, that is how we have to run every route when it's off or zone, all off of steps. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. I always appreciate the feedback. Always great to hear from you guys as usual. And again, fellas, if you'd like an 8-week wide receiver gym and field schedule, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you guys on that. I'll see you guys next time.